Most of the scholars bear witness that this is the time. This is the factual year. And we all expect it to take place. Today, as you see, there is no peace wanted from this people, this race of people called white race or Caucasian.
And a guest, and maybe he could help me to convey a message to you. He's my friend. I like him a lot, and I'm going to tell you why I brought him in and why I think he's important to the future of you learning about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And his name is Yosef bin Asiel Israel. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back again to another installment of Know Thyself Radio Show, where we make it our business, our duty, our responsibility to give you nothing but the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I am always grateful and privileged to be in this position, to come before you and to give credence and to bear witness to the greatness of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, not excluding the God that he represents, Allah in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. But every time I have the privilege, honor, the blessed opportunity to have another witness bearer alongside me to also bear witness to the greatness of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I am so delighted. And today, my brothers and sisters in the listening audience, you are in for a treat. See, before I bring my brother on, I just want to preface with a quick opening and why he's so dynamic and why his story is going to be so moving for you and I. This is a brother who, for years, have been connected with the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, first coming through the ranks of the FOI under the leadership of the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, and then finding that gem in the rough that a lot of people overlooked but would further bear witness to their greatness, which is the Organization for the Remembrance of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I speak of none other than Crow, spearheaded by those three monumental trailblazers of men, Brother Munir Muhammad, may Almighty God be pleased with his soul, Brother Halif Muhammad, and Brother Shahid Muslim, the co-founders, and all of those who have sacrificed their life to the preservation of the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. But those three men in particular, because when everybody else said that they believed, everybody else said that they wanted to remember the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and lift up his work, a lot of them fell by the wayside. And those men endured to the point where they were able to institutionalize his teachings in a way that you and I and this brother who you're about to hear from will be able to be the recipients of that blessed opportunity. This brother is a living, walking historical document in the most purest sense. You're talking about an encyclopedia of the history of not just the Nation of Islam, but the whole black experience. And his information that he has had, that he's accumulated, is invaluable. You cannot be able to understand your future if you don't know the past that have preceded you. And so as we, myself first being so again honored and privileged to have him here, and you and I listen to this brother's story, I want us to pay close attention, because in his life, you're going to be able to see the necessary inspiration that allows you and I to overcome a lot of the trials and tribulations that we may face. I want to bring to you my brother, my friend, Brother Emanuel Omarr. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Hey, sir, I'm so grateful to have you here in this day, to have the opportunity to interview you. But again, I want the audience to hear from you. So if you can just give us a quick, brief, description on your life and how you came into this point.
Assalamu alaikum, my black brother. I don't know that edification, but it kind of caught me off guard. That was well done. I appreciate it. Growing up in the Robert Taylor homes in the 60s and mid 70s, I would see Muslims every now and then from the Nation of Islam. Our insurance man was one, and he would come by, to check, pick up the money for insurance and things like that. And one day took us to some of us boys to the temple over on Stony Island when Honorable Elijah Muhammad was among us, but he wasn't there that day. But I had always noticed that these brothers and sisters were just beautiful. They were like a different people. They wasn't like the rest of us. They shined, and I'm not just talking about the clothes they wore. I'm talking about their faces, their countenance, their eyes, their hygiene. They just looked great, and I was always attracted to that. Though I never followed up on it in my youth, but it was very memorable. Joining the military at the age of 17, I stayed in there like 6 years and didn't run into much Islam or too much followings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but it stuck in the back of my mind. And after 6 years in the Navy, I wanted to come home and join the Nation of Islam. That's because after being exposed to white folk for those 6 years, and it was not a bad experience, it's just that I recognized that I wanted to be a part of something black and wonderful, and that's what stuck in my head. And I came straight home. I was discharged from the military 1983 on Savior's Day. I came straight home, and I missed Savior's Day, which was at that time at the Genesis Convention Center in Gary, Indiana. I didn't get a chance to go, but that very next day I was down there at the Final Call building, sitting there, meeting people, and wanting to be a part of what they were all about. And I did become a part of that, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Marching in the streets, selling the Final Call newspaper, bean pies. I had fun actually. It had a sense of actually military camaraderie that I had just left, but it was all black brothers, and I really enjoyed it. I was a part of that for maybe say roughly a year and a half, but at the time I was just a wannabe. I was not processing. I wasn't going through the process of processing into the Nation of Islam. So I never wrote the letter and things of that nature. As they say, became a registered Muslim. But that didn't stop me from loving Minister Farrakhan and the brotherhood and the sisterhood, and remembering that and keeping that as a precious part of my life. What happened though, I took a walk on the wild side. I walked away, and started going back to see what my old friends were doing, and that was detrimental to me because I wound up getting hooked on drugs, hanging out a little too much, and losing my job and falling by the wayside. When you leave God and His messenger, you get a devil for a companion. So I don't know which one, who the devil was, but it could have been me. But I'm not going to say that was totally negative. Something about losing yourself allows you to look deeper into who you are and how this could happen. So I'm probably one person who would say that, getting hooked on drugs and falling by the wayside was a good thing in the long term because it caused me to look deeper into myself as to how this could happen and really who am I as an individual. It was nice to it was great to have knowledge of self, knowledge of God and the devil. But, the funny thing about Islam is that I'm of the opinion that Islam itself does not cure you. It is a religion, it's a way of life, but sometimes you just need to go see a doctor. And, Islam is not going to cure your toothache. You need to go see a dentist, in any other form or any other malady. There are professionals who look into these kind of things. So going into drug rehab afforded me to look into the kind of person that I was and who was I really as an individual. And I had to just go back and look and see that, I was wasting my life because all of my life up until that point, I had been 32 years old, was a person that was okay, but and he got through life pretty good, you know. But I was a funny, jokey, hilarious type of brother, and that kind of personality got me through and accepted by everybody, you know. Not getting along. I mean, not having conflict in your life because you blow everything off, funny, everything's laughter. But deep inside, you know, I didn't realize that I was really a broken person. So I started working on that, looking at my character defects and working with these people in drug rehab. But I latched on to my God again. I latched back on to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam and the Messenger's God and the Quran and Islam. And it was like a 1-2 punch, man. It just started to straighten me out, lift me up, and bring me back into a perpendicular, you know, an upright position. And I'm thankful that I had already that foundation to stand on. So when I stood back up on it, I stood stronger on it. I had more faith. I had clarity that the messenger was right, and everything he taught was right. His God is right. Islam is right. The Quran is right. And I went on from there. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it just became a matter of finding a new home. Because I went back over there, and at this time, Mr. Farrakhan and the Final Call structure had repurchased the mosque over on Stony Island. I kind of missed all that movement. So when I went back, you know, the brother had said to me, one brother, who was my squad leader at the time, and he said, "Brother, you just can't come back up in here like that, you know." I told him, I never even processed. I was just hanging on. He said, oh, no kidding. Well, come on back in, brother, you know. And I did. And I would go over there and go to some study groups and things of that nature. But one day I was coming down the street from my own home, and I met a brother walking down the street. I said, "What?" And obviously he was a Muslim brother, but he was kind of shaking, you know, because he had some kind of brain trauma. But the brother was, you know, obviously a Muslim brother. You know, he didn't let nothing stop him. He was taking up the sidewalk. He walking the earth like it was his. So I just stopped the brother there. Assalamu alaikum, brother. And he got to telling me that his name was Brother Rahim, and that his organization, the Coalition for the Remembrance of Elijah Muhammad, CROW, had moved into the neighborhood. I was like, wow, I never heard of CROW. And so I'm interested, you know. And so he had a shaky hand. He was actually pointing across the street, but his hand was all over the place. I wound up walking all the way to California. I can't find the place. But I came back. It was right across the street, practically where he was standing. And so I walked in, and the first brother I met was Brother Earl Rockline. And he invited me in, and they let me know at that time. I started meeting the founders. Brother Munir Muhammad, Brother Halif Muhammad, his brother, Brother Shaheed Muslim, who was once a lieutenant for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the original Nation of Islam, and another brother who was another founder who was no longer a part of it after a few years after I got here. His name was Arif Shakur, which I actually gravitated to him because I liked his wit. But he decided to go another way. Coming to CROW, I should point out the difference. The difference that I experienced at CROW as opposed to over at the Final Call, Mosque Miriam at the time, number 2. The difference was that I got raw Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It was as if, you know, I was being taught without even hearing the name Minister Farrakhan, hardly at all. And while I didn't recognize the difference at first, but it happened one day. It dawned on me because I went back over to a study group over there at the mosque, and as I was sitting there, the brother was teaching at the table. He was really doing an awesome job. And I was fired up, riding right along with him. But he turned and said, "We got to be just like him." He said, "We must be like him." And I just knew he was talking about, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Then he turned to a poster at the time of Minister Farrakhan and said, "There he is." And for me, that's when I noticed that there's a difference. And I'm not saying it was a bad difference. In fact, it's a good difference if you was going to follow the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught by the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. And I really didn't have a problem with that, but I just noticed there's a difference. And that kind of stuck out to me. So I came back here at Crow and I talked about it and to Munir. And Brother Munir said, "Well, you got a choice. You can go over there, or you can stay here, or you can go back and forth." And eventually, I settled in here at the Coalition for the Remembrance of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. I dived right in to the teachings. I was able to avail myself of the information they had here, particularly the old Muhammad Speaks newspaper. I got caught up, man. And I remember brothers selling those when I was a little boy, and I had the opportunity to sell the Final Call with my little group with the Final Call structure too. So I felt a quick connection. But to go back and dive into that history, particularly from the early 60s throughout the 60s, and I'd say up until 75, 76, brother, it was so eye-opening that it was almost saying, like, where's this stuff been all my life? It was so, it was incredible. And the Muhammad Speaks newspaper had to be approved by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So everything in there was, it had his stamp of approval. Sometimes stuff was sneaked by though, but he would come down on you if it was something that was not something he would approve of in the paper. So I got caught up on that. And another thing that I got totally immersed in was listening to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad himself on tape. I'm telling you, brother, it hit me deep. It hit me. Every word was like settling in on every fiber of my being. This man was so profound and never using big words with a lot of syllables, and you never had to really run to the dictionary, because he was a plain warner. He was a plain deliverer of his message, and his easygoing Southern sound. He sounded like your grandfather or your great uncle or something. And I'm telling you, it was all instructional. It was beautiful, the way he delivered his teaching and listening to his voice, and then finally getting the chance to see him on video. That was like the icing on the cake. Yeah, brother. And I started to search high and low, become a part of this archive for wherever I went. I would travel sometime with my wife because she worked for this company. They had annual meetings in different places in different cities. One time we were in San Francisco. And I had been to San Francisco when I was in the Navy. We docked at Fisherman's Wharf. But going back this time, I wasn't just a young sailor looking to go disco or nothing like that. It was way back there. I spent time at the San Francisco Public Library looking into their newspapers, particularly the San Francisco Examiner, I believe it was, and the San Francisco Chronicle, I think it was. I got a lot of information out of there about the Muslims on the West Coast, what was going on there. I remember particularly what occurred in the San Quentin prison in 1960. I want to say 3, but it could have been 1961 it could have been. where the brother, where they had followers there at San Quentin, and the brother was the mosque, the minister there at the prison was a brother named Booker T. X. And Booker T. X had gotten into this fight with a white dude, and they had the Aryan Brotherhood and all that sort of thing way back then. And he got into a fight out in the yard, and the tower guard gunned him down. And didn't gun down the other guy, gunned him down. And there was, that was a tragic situation because he was the minister. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, well, who is his cellmate? And they said, a brother named Eldridge Cleaver. So he became the next prison minister at San Quentin back then in the early 60s. Eldridge Cleaver, the one we know who became a Black Panther Minister of Information. I don't know why he didn't stay with the Nation of Islam, but when Malcolm was killed, a lot of people turned on a dime. A lot of stuff arose after the death of Malcolm that wasn't there at first. Different Black Power movements like the Black Panthers, Ron Karinga, and there's quite a few more. Even I think I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. The 5% organization. These all arose after the death of Malcolm, because people loved Malcolm and they loved his charisma and his ability to transmit this teaching to people the way he did. Yeah, he was a very good talker, wonderful orator, fabulous man even to look at. From what I understand, he was all that they said he was. And his death was awful, no doubt. But Malcolm, as I studied the history, and he lost his way, according to the way we who love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he went off into another direction, but not before saying horrible things about the leader and teacher. And that's a very difficult part of the history of the Nation of Islam, I think. But the Nation of Islam has had maybe 5 or 6 crucial moments in it. First the coming of the God, then the God leaving, and the messenger being appointed as the messenger. And back then others did not necessarily want to follow him. And now we talking about the early 30s now. And by them not wanting, they said, well, we met this man, Master Farad Muhammad. We don't see him as God in person. Or he left me in charge, or why didn't he leave me in charge instead of you? But he was chosen as his messenger. And because of that kind of infighting, the messenger's own brother turned hypocrite, obviously, Brother Kalat. And the messenger says he got afflicted, until death overtook him. But he had to go. He went on the run to save himself from people who wanted to kill him. He came to Chicago, and the rest is history. But it's a beautiful history.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful history. And the more you learn about it, the more you fall in love with it. I think that anybody within the sound of my voice should certainly investigate the history of the Nation of Islam. Because let's say that the messenger is right, and he is. Then what's on the line here is, did God actually come as prophesied? And did God actually leave a messenger for us, as the Bible says. Behold, I'll send my messenger from before my face, and his name, in fact, would be Elijah. Funny thing is that the messenger talks about how God, in person, Master Farad Muhammad, wanted to give him another name. I think the name would have been Kareem, I think he said it was. And the messenger said, no, I'll just keep this name Elijah. And he said that God looked at him kind of funny, but that was that. But it answers the prophecy. Behold, I'll send you Elijah from before my face. He'll turn the hearts of the sons to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to the sons, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse, which is the last verses of the book of Malachi, which means my messenger. Even though in the Old Testament, that is the end of the Old Testament. It closes out in the Bible. It actually says end of prophets, or end of the Old Testament. But when you open the New Testament, it opens up talking about a man named, being born, named Jesus. And that kind of throws you off a little bit. But when the people when Jesus grew up and started teaching, the people asked, particularly those in the Jewish ranks, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and scribes, well, who are you? Are you Elijah? They was expecting Elijah, as though they still expect Elijah today. But Elijah, that was 2,000 years from the time of Jesus, and even Jesus said, no, I'm not Elijah. But we got a lot out of Jesus in his life and time. So in this day and time, we got ourselves a modern Jesus, and his name is Elijah. And it's a great and wonderful story. It connects. It lines up with everything in a verse in Scripture. It and even jumps into the Quran, because the messenger says, I'm the Elijah of your Bible and the Muhammad of your Quran. Now I know we get a lot of flack for that, but the Muhammad of that day, he lived his life during that time, but he could not take you up to the resurrection or the end time. So you needed another Muhammad for that. And so we have in our midst Elijah Muhammad. And the man did his job. He did his job well. For 44 years, the messenger worked among us tirelessly, putting up with a dead people, a dead nation. He's working in the realm of resurrecting, our people from the dead. And that's tough. That's a hard task. We in 2020 right now. The messenger has been gone for 45 years or something like that. Man, it's still tough. Still, you would think, generations come and go, and we still dealing with this dead level. But all this information out around us. So you need to come to Muhammad. You need to come to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And if you're black American especially, you need to quit clowning around and get on over here and come see us at the Coalition for the Remembrance of Elijah Muhammad and get this raw teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I guarantee you, that is the medicine that will cure all your ills. Believe me.
Let me say this real briefly, brother. Again, you're listening to our beloved brother Emanuel, and I told you, he is a walking repository of information. You said some key points, brother, and I want you to touch on this. Two things. You had already been affiliated, to a certain degree, immersed in the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Islam is so taught by the Messenger of God, but yet and still, you were a victim of the environment, your circumstances, and you failed, like you said. But again, because of that seed being planted inside of you, because of what was taking root in your life, which is the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you were conscious enough to say, hey, I need to go get some outside help. I need to put myself in a position where I am isolated from the ills of this world and those negative influences, and to go inside of myself and start to reorient my thinking and get back to what I know is going to be the source of my salvation. So I want you to speak to that, because it's so important that you said that as it relates to what we're seeing today in the world. Like you just said, we're talking about 45 years after the messenger's transition, him departing us. We're talking about 90 years this July 4th, which the God revealed himself to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Yet and still, with all that information, with all that knowledge, our people are still being victim of Satan and his evil rule and falling into the traps that have been so easily outlined by the messenger of God and those of that ilk. But again, as you use your life as, I believe, the most beautiful testimony of that reality, that though we slip, though we stumble, you don't necessarily have to be down for the count if you stay true to, like you said, what is that source of life. And we identify that as the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Why? Because we don't just believe, it is verifiable in our life through what we've been able to manifest, that he did meet with God. And we know that for a surety. The power that he possessed, the power that we possess, even when we follow to our minute level of the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, what we're able to manifest. So again, brother, speak to that point, because I think that is the solution for a lot of our people. Because I think a lot of us know the Nation of Islam, maybe indirectly, some of us familiar with the aspects, but yet and still, or have been in the nation, but yet and still, again, kind of fall by the wayside, kind of get consumed by this world, and we think that's the end. We can't get back into a position of being our natural self. So if you can just speak to that point, because I think it's so imperative that this generation in particular understand the end isn't the end unless it's the end. You know what I mean? Like, we just because we've slipped, we fail, that don't mean we have to stay down. And can you just speak to that point, if you may?
Yes, sir. When we are the people of God, we're gonna gravitate to God, no matter how it's presented to us. If it's good and it's right, it can come to us in different religions, and we're gonna love God presented to us in whatever religion. If it's good to us, we're gonna be true and faithful to that. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we need and other religions and other information that's good. We need all of that. We need a religion that anything that's good, we can take that. But the messenger said we need something today that's all good. All go. That's where we at. We stuck today in the United States of America, where we have a government and a people that hate us. And you saying, well, Emanuel, do they really hate us? Well, if they pump drugs into your community, these horrible, harmful drugs, just pump them in, and we like to party, we social beings, we want to do what everybody else is doing. If it's putting a smile on your face, it'll put a smile on my face. But we don't know the insidiousness of the nature of addiction, and this is comes into our community and by the tons. People who don't like us, could care less for us, wants to see us actually off the earth. So if you like me get caught up in some of that, perhaps you can you don't have to stay there. You don't have to be stuck. You're a much better individual than what your circumstance dictate to you at this time or at that time. That's what I saw, and so I reached inside, and went and backtracked. So where did I go wrong? I went, just like you drive in a car, that you're supposed to exit at a certain point to get to your destination. If you went past that point, now you got to find a way back to that point, or redirect to get to that road you should be on to get to your destination. And that's the way it is with life sometimes. You have to redirect. You have to get back to that point where you went wrong. wind up evaluating your friendship, your friends. You want your friends to, and you want for your brother what you want for yourself, even if you're doing bad. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion for anybody who is caught up in any kind of vice, any form of addiction, whether it's gambling, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes. None of those things really you have to go to your grave with. You can jettison that stuff off you at any point in time, but nothing beats a well made up mind. And when your mind is made up to do this, it's not even going to be a problem. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, men and women came to the Nation of Islam with all kind of vices back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, but particularly the 50s and 60s. People liked heroin back then. Heroin was the drug. They injected it. But we got tapes where one brother said when he heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching, his biggest problem was just trying to find a suit to wear to the temple. And they just see the word was so powerful back then, and so raw that and so right that they didn't need a rehab person. They didn't need to go to AA or NA. They was just through when they heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching. And that's when he was in our midst physically. There must have been something about the fact that him being here made it more potent, made his teachings more potent, made his word more potent. Because, in fact, about it, you may even have the opportunity to see him. You may have been in the Nation of Islam and you may have fallen by the wayside. And nobody could tolerate you actually being in that structure if you chose to leave the Nation of Islam and go follow. Me, myself, I left and I didn't go around the brotherhood because I didn't want them to even see me out in the street. You know what I'm saying? So, and I would run into a brother every now and then. What are you doing out here? I just kept it real. But I do advise people to seek out help. Seek out help. You can come to the Nation of Islam, or you can go to any religion. Some say Jesus saved them, but I advise people to seek out professional help and counseling. Just humble yourself. And which is hard to do. Really hard to humble yourself, and it's hard to go in to yourself and recognize what your weakness is, your faults, your shortcomings. And many of this stuff occurs when we are children. We raised up in these families. I know about my family in particular. I grew up in Robert Taylor homes. I had a whole lot of friends. But there were issues that would occur in your life as a child that would impact you. Good impact. You can be impacted really, really good, or you can be impacted really, really badly. And sometimes abuse issues would occur that has occurred with many people, including myself. Physical, sexual, verbal. The words that you hear, are they hit hard. They hit hard. If your parents said some horrible things to you, you never forget that. It's worse than being slapped when you were a child. But some people, I particularly grew up or came back, and when I fell into the drug scene, I saw a lot of black sisters, that were beautiful little girls growing up. I remember seeing their faces when I was little, jumping double dutch, hopscotch, those kind of things that girls did. Now I saw them, in addiction and doing things that I felt was horrible. My nature was such that I didn't take too much advantage of that people when they were down. Plus, I had my own money. I was working for the post office at the time, and they eventually fired me though, which I'm glad they did. because I used working, having a check or a job as a crutch. When I ran out of drugs, I knew that back then they gave you a little credit because they knew you worked for the Postal Service and I was going to get a check. But when they finally fired me, I felt a burden off of my shoulders. While most people would say, oh man, yeah, but brother, the funny thing about my drug of choice was that if you didn't have the money, you didn't want to use because you didn't want to put yourself out there on that trail. So, but when you got the money, you would blow it all. So I just got to the point where, having the job became a crutch. And when I finally learned that they had dismissed me, I was able to get down to business and rebuild myself. And I'm hoping that somebody out there can hear this, that, the rebuilding process, is fun.
Yes, sir.
You get a new lease on life. You can do, if you're down in the mud and then you recognize that, hey, wait a minute, I got nowhere else to go but up, because I'm at bottom, but they used to say, jails, institutions, or death, you ain't dead. If you ain't in jail or if you're getting out of jail, you have the opportunity to remake yourself and do whatever you want to do in life. Be whoever you want to be, whatever kind of professional. Nobody can stop you from learning. You got a brain. You can do whatever. You can learn whatever. You can be a pilot or whatever. Or a lawyer. You can do whatever you want to do. So for me, it just was about being a better me, a better Emanuel, Omarr. I was able to get myself together, get a wonderful wife, have a family, home, and I've clinged to these great teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I've met a lot of wonderful people, and being a member of Crow, I should say, I used to ride around with Munir Muhammad because he would be everywhere. I mean, he would make all kind of relationships, and sometimes I would be the driver, the official, unofficial driver. We would go out of town sometime, and the man was such a hard-working man, and I met people I would have never had the opportunity to meet. Governors, I was in the governor's mansion, practically sliding down the rails, you know what I'm saying? But that's back when Blagojevich was the governor of Illinois. We had access to the back rooms of the Illinois Supreme Court, the State House, the Capitol building. They opened the door. They flung open the prisons for us to go in to talk to our brothers and sisters in the state prisons, in the county prisons. It was a wonderful, eye-opening experience to run with Munir and Alif and Shaheed, and Mandine, and it was we were like a traveling pack. We were tough, man. And to see the doors fling open, I mean, like, no way they gonna let us there, fling right open. All praise is due to Allah, for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said we would have friendship in all walks of life, and we had it. We got it. We still have it. And we don't want to squander that. We want to build on that. Not that Munir's passed on. We have to continue on and build on what we have here. His son has stepped up to the plate. And is doing a wonderful job as the host, Brother Jamil Muhammad. And we still have our core operation here at the Coalition for the Remembrance of Elijah Muhammad. And I'm hoping that big things are in the offing. Well, just sitting here with you, brother. You come here. I didn't know you, and I knew your daddy. I knew him since the early 80s when I first got out of the Navy. He was one of the first people I met at the Final Call building. And he was a very open and warm brother, and I was honored to meet him. And I didn't know too much about the Hebrew Israelite family, but I learned a lot, and I felt very welcomed.
Yes, sir.
In his presence. I would hear him speak way back then, and I got a whole lot out of what he said. And I'm really glad that we still have this relationship with him. He's an older brother now, but he got sons, particularly you, who has come here and immersed yourself in this understanding and this teaching. And for that, I salute you, brother. It could only add to your storehouse of knowledge with the brother and sisterhood at the Hebrew Israelites nation. And I think that I see you as a kind of a hybrid type of brother. You can walk in both worlds. Just like almost the messenger. He liked the brother who could walk in, who come out of the evil world. They can walk back into it to extract what he want out of it. Because he knows both worlds. As opposed to someone who was just raised up in it. It's almost like the prodigal son. The father says, well, he know both worlds. And his other son was like, hey, I ain't never been nowhere, and you love him more. No, he said that ain't the case, son. What he knows, we both going to benefit from it. We all going to benefit. And that's how I feel about you and your father. I adore the man. I think he knows that. And, I've met, and here at the Coalition for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Crow, I've met so many people that I know I would have never met. Sitting right here in this spot, it had to be 20 years ago. Brother Stokely Carmichael, and his name, coming to right, yeah. I had read about him over the years, and SNCC and all that, and the civil rights movement, and he walked through those doors, and he had the brothers from the Final Call newspaper with him, and he sat there at the podium and spoke. It wasn't nothing but 25 people here dispersed. I was sitting back here in the back by myself where we're sitting. I was in tears. I'm telling you, I was in tears. And I just started clapping like crazy, and he looked around the corner there and said, who's back here, And he didn't know he had impacted me so, I just felt so connected to history that I could not contain myself. And that's where it is here. They all mention the Honorable Elijah Muhammad at some point or another. And I feel that if you want to live forever, some people will live forever because they are forever on song. They wrote songs or they did television. You can always, I see people who are long deceased, and it's almost as if they're not deceased because I see them on TV, and you only get so many years in these bodies, so to be connected to something that's going to continue on is how you live forever, your personal self. And you want your name, affiliated with the Nation of Islam, an Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan. And, I have a group called the Elijah Muhammad Fan Club group. And, we got a lot of people that, from a lot of different walks who contribute. Sometimes there's argument. I try to quell that and say we not that sort of, as long as it don't get out of hand. You got people who love Minister Farrakhan, people who hate Minister Farrakhan. And I say, listen, at this group, if you disagree, that's fine. But don't be disagreeing and then going back and forth at each other in a bad manner. Because we vie and we can argue in the best of manner. If you disagreeable, you can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable. Yes, sir. So it's a wonderful thing to be a part of, just like what you're doing here. And I wish you a lot of success, my brother. It's good to see you doing these things. You still got some youth in you. And I'm up in I'm up in 60 now, and some say you don't look it, but doggone, I feel it.
Well, Brother Emanuel, if I may, again, I'm so floored with your ability to cover such various degrees of the Nation of Islam, but again, the whole black experience, and how that your life, and for me, really represents in totality the growth process of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. How you started off in one endeavor, may have seen your life was going to end up one way, but as you gravitated more and more to these teachings, as you let it consume you, as you find your own footing in it. Like you said, you were around monumental men. It was easy to try to imitate or follow in their footsteps or try to be a replica of them, a facsimile, so to speak. But you chose, hey, I got a distinct ability and gift, and I'm my own person, you know. And I think that comes from, like you said, going inside of yourself and doing that self-reflection, that self-work. It gave you another level of appreciation for yourself once you got to know the real self. But I want to say this as we wrap. I know we've been going for almost an hour now, and it's just flying. Time flies when you have fun, they say, and this has surely been a joy for me. I want you to talk about something, because you mentioned it maybe indirectly, but you spoke about the divinity of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I say that it's imperative to me, and one of the things that I'm very adamant about in my pursuit to encourage, inspire my generation is, especially our people in particular, is to understand their divinity. For the black man to miss his divinity is for him to miss his identity. You know, if he doesn't understand his connection to God, that he is a representation of God, you know, he's not able to really have no real self-assurance, therefore not having a real identity. And it's easy for him to get consumed in this world. So you talked about the transformation power of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and how those who were in the world may have had certain addictions, certain, you know, malbehavior practices and flaws in their characteristics, just being in the midst of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he was among us, just hearing his words, being in the temple, they changed overnight. They put down whatever they were doing before and said, hey, I'm done with this. I want to follow in that vein. You know, I want to work in this vineyard. And that goes directly to his divinity. Even for him to tell the God, no, I think I want to keep the name Elijah. How do you tell the God that? You know what I mean? And he agreed because he knew. And again, when or how do we, because you spoke about, like I said, indirectly in your life story and covering so many things, how do we understand the importance of knowing our divinity and that being the precursor to implementing our freedom into perpetuity?
Yeah, brother, that's a lot on the plate. Well, like I said, we are the people of God, you know, so we just need to be connected to God. You know, if we're not connected to God, we connected to the devil. So the divinity of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was given to him by his God, by the coming of God, Master Farad Muhammad. Now, one thing we should try to understand is that Master Farad Muhammad, he came alone. You know, he was a man who was made for the purpose, or brought forth for the purpose, and trained for the purpose. You know, in the beginning was the Word. You know, and the Word was God. You know, so you have the ability to become God through the Word. You know, depending on how much of the Word you can handle. Yes, sir. So, so he absolutely is divine. And I think people try to take his divinity by talking about his domestic life or any of these shortcomings that the Nation of Islam itself had. But once, and he probably was a man who had, I'm sure he was, talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who had shortcomings before he met with the God. But once the God transformed him into his messenger, he could, in my opinion, or has not done any wrong. And he's been all good, but some people try to, and has done over the years, try to take from him, and then by doing so, turn people away from him, away from their own salvation. Through the messenger and his words, that is our own salvation. You know, and if to reject the messenger and reject his God, it is to our detriment, to our doom, because the God is here to destroy his enemy. He's actually trying to pull you out of the fire that he himself is about to, or is doing right now, laying upon his enemy, which the messenger says America first. So he is very much a divine man. And, one thing about Crow, as I became an early member, like I said, I was over there in the final call. But one day I walked in here during the grand opening, and I was shocked to see Minister Farrakhan and members that I marched with here. Shahrazad Ali. It was a beautiful day. I got a chance to meet some of the old ministers of the Nation of Islam, and over the years I've had the great and humbling experience to meet some of the messengers, staunch, strongest ministers. I've met Brother John Shabazz of Temple 27 out there in the Bay Area. I've met Brother John Allah, John Shabazz, I believe his name was back then, from L.A. I've met Jeremiah Shabazz, Temple number 12 and 15 in Atlanta, Georgia, and Philly. I've met Brother Theodore Hamza of Cincinnati. These men, came here. They were older men, and some of them were sick. Theodore Hamza was coughing. I knew he even coughed up blood. I saw it in the napkin, and I realized the man was very ill. But he wanted to come here. He wanted to come here and pay his homage to what was a very important part of his life, and that is being a minister of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He didn't go with Wallace. And when Wallace engineered the takeover of the Nation of Islam, and that's what happened. It was engineered. We all know that now. He wasn't really, in my opinion, supposed to take over the Nation of Islam. If anybody was prepared to do so, it was Minister Farrakhan, and he did not. He didn't go against the family. I know I'm going off in another direction, but he didn't go against the family. He bided his time, before to see where this was going, and then he just couldn't take it no more, and the man just left, and started to rebuild the Nation of Islam under the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and for that he gets all the credit in the world. There were others who stood up, like Brother Silas Muhammad, and some others spattered around the country now. But Minister Farrakhan did a whale of a job, and we cannot take that from him. He did great, and is still doing great. So all praise is due to Allah for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his great ministers of the past. And I would not have gotten a chance to kind of know them in detail unless I read Muhammad Speaks newspaper from the past, listened to them on tapes, like particularly during Savior's days, or especially during the 1972 Theology of Time lecture series. Now, I wonder if people really listen to that. I wonder if folks really, in the Nation of Islam, in fact, because I don't hear folks talking about the messenger himself so much. I understand, that the greatness of Minister Farrakhan, but he didn't get great on his own. He tells you where he got it from. And I think that people owe him a debt of gratitude to at least go back and see who he's talking about and what made the messenger make such a great man out of him. And see, I drink from the well that Minister Farrakhan drinks from. See, he don't have to reach in and into the well of Zam and pour me a glass. I stick my whole head in the well of Zam myself and drink freely as I wanna. And that is of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which is compared to the water. So this is a great and wonderful walk of life. And when to the day I die, I will be very, very happy to say, that I am a follower of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I don't know his God only through what he told me about him. I love him that way. And that God set before me a man and said, this is the door, that you must walk through. And so I'm just totally, like the messenger said, if you believe that I am he, lucky. You're just lucky, man, to know it. And I'm lucky, brother. I'm really lucky.
I am eternally grateful again for that God coming and revealing himself to the messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. I am so honored that that messenger took heed to those teachings of the God, Master Fuad, and he went about in building a nation for us. And I must be honest and open that I am truly appreciative of Brother Munir Muhammad, Brother Halif Muhammad, Brother Shaheed Muslim for staying true to those teachings. And even in their time after the transition of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, they, in their hearts, knew that his message, his life's work, his teachings could not fall by the wayside and be an afternote, something that you mention in the high and by, but must be out in the forefront. And they sacrificed their lives to the preservation of this reality. And again, that's why me and my brother can sit here in the headquarters, the Crow, the archives, that museum, that center, that transformation hub, which is the coalition for the remembrance of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad Crow, and have this conversation today as men of God. And I wanted to bring before you Brother Emanuel Omarr, because again, as you've seen and you've heard, you're not watching it, but you're listening to our brother articulate so profoundly his life, but how it's intimately connected with the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and with Crow, and how he has been in position to receive such a wealth of knowledge, information, and power to transform his life, his family's life. And you see what he's doing for me right now. He's reinvigorating me and repurposing me in my mission by giving me such powerful life stories that are able to give me the appropriate direction on how to, one, fortify myself and how to reach my brothers and sisters. So again, Brother Emanuel, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation with you. As we wrap up, any closing words, anywhere that people can find you? I know you're going to tell them here, but please, give them some closing remarks and us some closing remarks.
Well, thank you, brother, for the opportunity to come on your podcast. You're an awesome brother. You come from an awesome daddy. Wonderful man, Prince Asiel. And I want you to know that inviting me on your podcast, it kind of made me a little nervous. But I tell you, we have to get this out to our people. And I admire you for doing it. And I wish you well. And brothers and sisters, continue to listen to the Brothers podcast, and you will learn that what you need to know to rescue yourself from the clutches of the devil and come into this pristine, wonderful understanding. So thank you, brother, for having me on. I appreciate it very much, and looking forward to hearing it, actually.
Yes, sir. We're definitely going to get it to you. I want to say this briefly, that this is a monumental podcast, not just because I have my brother, but because I have my brother, and this is my first in-studio interview that I've done. Up until this point, everyone was done over the computer, over the phone. Brother Jamil Munir Muhammad, he's out there here, Crow, in the front. He was my first interview.
Awesome.
Praise be to Allah. His grandfather and his father got the ability to hear that before brother made transition. So I'm so happy that we had the ability to do that. Very young, articulate, strong brother. But again, this is my first in-studio interview, and I'm just so grateful it could have been with you, because I couldn't have had a more knowledgeable, loving, warming, and considerate brother as yourself. Again, you have done so much for me. I remember, like you said, you was the unofficial official driver, Brother Munir. I remember us going up there to the White Sox games and those different things. Yes, sir. So we've had a rich history even up until this point before we understood, our position in each other's lives, and we developed our own personal relationships. So I'm grateful that we had that opportunity. And again, as we close out, again, you listen to my brother, Emanuel Omarr, a walking historian, but also his life is testimony again that as far as you think you can fall, you can rise even higher. And he's an example of that. So I want to give a special thank you again to the Coalition for the Remembrance of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our co-founders, Brother Shaheed Muslim, Brother Halif Muhammad, and may Almighty God Allah be pleased with his soul, Brother Munir Muhammad, and all of the members of Crow, Brother Jamil Muhammad, again, as Brother said, who has taken on the mantle of his father and continuing the shows and the apparatus of media here at Crow, and he's doing a magnificent job. My brother, my friend, my companion, and all of the production team, Brother Mandine, and we can go on and on and on. I'm so grateful. I want to thank again my father, who again has touched so many lives and the reason I'm here today, who he met my mother, who was a follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Angel Muhammad, at the Final Call building. But most importantly, I want to thank Almighty God Allah. And I want to thank him for leaving the East and coming unto the West, as brother said, by himself, to raise that special soul, the one who was formed and fashioned for this day and time, for the resurrection of our people. And I speak none other than the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I thank you for listening as I leave you, as I greeted you, in the words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum.